Welcome everyone to the July Legislative Program Committee meeting. This will be our last meeting before August recess, and then we'll resume again in September. All right. We have Supervisor Hartman, Supervisor Capps here, so we'll get started. And do we have anybody online for public comment, Sarah, on items that are not on the agenda?
Yes, looks like we have Linda want to come in.
Let's go ahead. Linda, go ahead and you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hello there. I'm Linda Honigman from District 2, and I just want to make sure that another bill on your radar is the SB 627, the No Secret
Adhere
Police Act.
Turned all the my old age.
Are you hearing me? Hello.
So we're hearing you, but it's very soft. So I wonder, just for
Let
us
me
in
see
the
if I can
room, so
turn
I wonder if you can increase your
that's
as well.
okay. This is maximum. Is that any better?
Yeah, we can hear you, but as loud as you can talk would be super helpful to us. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to say the bill number that I'm hoping you will look at, which is SB 627, the No Secret Police Act, where they have to take off their masks and have a badge and a name and so on. Did you hear that?
Yep.
You did.
It's ICE
Okay.
thing.
Very
I wanted to raise that as well.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We can talk about that
SB
at the end. Is
627.
that appropriate?
Yeah, under, well, we can do it during the state update
Sure.
because it is legislation at the state level. That's totally appropriate.
Okay. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Any other commenters?
Yes, Morel Brooks.
All right. Morel, go ahead.
Okay.
Welcome.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
It's a volume on one of the computers. Is your
I have this volume turned all the
but is
way
your
up.
computer connected to that? Like, are you linked into it some
Shall I
way?
go on?
Sorry, Morel, we're just trying to get the volume up so we can hear
Okay.
a bit better.
I
But
can
if
hear
you can speak as loudly as you can, we'll keep
Maybe. Yes.
that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Um,
Yes.
There you
There we go. That'll work.
okay, good morning.
There we go. Perfect. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have the agenda in front of me, but I have been reading, I guess it was in yesterday's LA Times. There's a proposal for a housing agency. And I hope that this is something that you will support and get more information. It sounds like, the housing agency on the state level has been combined with many other issues, and now they're looking at separating it, and that this would facilitate, the financing of affordable housing. All I know is what I read in the paper yesterday. So again, I just want to, put this on your radar. My other comments have to do with the trailer bills, and I think you're going to be discussing those. So I'll hold off if that's correct.
Sure. Yes, we can have you speak again when we get to that item. I think that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Any other public comment?
That looks.
No public comment, but it was the same bill that Linda was talking about, so I can wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Then we'll move to item 2, which is approval of the minutes from the June 2025 meeting. We have a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Eyes locked.
All right, then we'll move to item 3 for administrative items. So we'll have an update from our federal advocate, Don Gilchrist. Don, if you want to go ahead, please.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Certainly a very, very busy time in Washington, D.C., and I could appreciate the comments that were made before the meeting about overload, information overload. The big news is the enactment of HR 1, the budget reconciliation package, on July 4th. It's a very significant legislative product that resulted from intense activity in the House and the Senate for many weeks, many months. It is going to be a package that, as it's implemented, will have very difficult impacts on California and Santa Barbara County, especially in the area of Medi-Cal and the CalFresh programs, because of the reductions and changes to the programs that were included on the federal side in this legislation. We're looking at more than $1 trillion of reduced federal spending on Medicaid and on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's certainly in the hundreds of billions of dollars of cuts. And these are through changes in eligibility and cost shifts to the state. And so rolling these out is going to be a tough situation. We saw these coming from a long way away and have lobbied, as so many people have, against these changes. And but now they are law. Some of the things that we were concerned about, such as the Temporary Assistance to Needy Families Program and the Social Services Block Grant Program, did not occur, which I guess that's a glimmer of good news. But what did get enacted is significant and devastating and going to be very difficult. However, now with that on the books, Congress is turning its attention to the appropriations process. July is a very, very busy time for the House and Senate Appropriations Committees to try to move these bills through the process, at least at the committee level. We already can tell, because of the chasm that exists between the two parties on these spending issues, that there's no way these 12 bills will be signed into law by October 1, when the new fiscal year starts. That's going to be a process that drags on well into December, at least, I fear. And that is largely in part because there's no agreement on what the overall numbers should be. How much should be spent on defense? How much should be spent on non-defense programs? Certainly, President Trump has proposed deep cuts to non-defense programs in order to increase spending for defense and border enforcement. And so that's going to be difficult to work through. We're especially concerned about the 44% cut that was proposed for housing programs, but also very deep cuts for health programs at HHS, and also the environmental and conservation programs that we find in the Interior and Environment Bill. We're going to see today a little bit more information about what's happening and how this is playing out, because in the House, the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Bill will be marked up at the subcommittee level late today. That will go to the full committee on Thursday. So some information has been made available, and I've been reviewing it. We won't have all of the details until full committee. That's the way they do it. They just sort of hold a little back and fill in a lot of the details at the full committee level. But we can sort of see what's happening. And I guess the news is sort of good. The cuts are not as significant as were proposed by Trump for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's around 6%. That's nothing to celebrate at all. The cuts would still be significant. We would see the Home Investment Partnership Act program eliminated under this proposal. I think there would be significant impacts on community development block grants, although I'm still working through that to try to understand how the committee is approaching that. The rental assistance programs would be underfunded, but certainly far, far better situation than Trump had proposed, where he essentially was trying to get rid of those programs. There would be a deep cut in personnel at the department. So it's significant. It's something that we have been opposing, will continue to oppose. But with appropriations, we have different ways and more ways to influence the process than we did with reconciliation. I'm expecting a much better approach out of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and we'll continue to work on this each step of the way. Will be very difficult. I think the House is gonna get its bills out of committee before the August recess, and we'll have a lot more information to go on then. The Senate takes a little bit longer, and they probably won't finish drafting their versions of the bills until September. So appropriations is going to dominate a lot of our work for the rest of the summer, but we are aware that the Trump administration is doing quite a bit, is continuing to do quite a bit through executive orders and other administrative actions. So many things in the news to talk about and to keep track of. I think the Supreme Court cases recently are significant, and I highlighted them in my written report because they don't necessarily address the merits of the cases, but they do lean more in the direction of allowing the Trump administration to continue its efforts while the cases are being considered. And so in the case of the restructuring of federal agencies, the court said no injunction against that. However, we'll make no statement on the legality of it. And that gives the Trump administration a lot of room to run to implement a lot of reductions in force and layoffs. And that certainly is something that would be of concern to the county because of how it would impact the implementation of federal programs. And so this is just more of the same. We have a long way to go on these things. I don't think at all these court cases are going to be decided anytime soon, but I do think we're going to see a lot more actions by President Trump and his Office of Management and Budget and others who want to implement these things. So we'll continue to work on that and keep track of it as best we can. And let me end there and see if I can address any other concerns or questions you might have.
I have a couple. So how active is Doge? I mean, it was kind of doing what OMB is designed to do. Are they still on separate tracks, or how is that proceeding?
I'm not sure what Doge is doing right now. I think
Yeah.
a lot of it is been moved over to the Office of Management and Budget. Russell Vought is sort of the main voice and the leader now, where Elon Musk was, up front and center. I think if Doge is doing anything, it's not something that's been easy for me to track because so much is happening through the White House itself.
Yeah, I'll just comment. I guess a big fear is what kind of data they collected in violation of HIPAA and how that will come to play in
Right.
places like California for undocumented people receiving medical services. My other issue is a small one, but we were awarded last year from the Department of Transportation 1.4 million under the ATIP program, the Active Transportation Infrastructure Program. And it's still in limbo. It was awarded to the Chumash tribe. They're back in DC this week lobbying for many things, including that, but anything you can do to track or put in a good word. It was
Yes.
awarded and we won it.
Yes, I certainly am aware of that and am trying to follow that. I do participate in calls with the DOT Intergovernmental Office, and they're somewhat proud of the fact that they're supposedly processing many of these grants that were held up, but they're not doing it fast enough. And I fear that the categories of active transportation and other things having to do with charging infrastructure are not going to be moved fast. So thank you for mentioning that. It's certainly something that I'm aware of your concerns and how important this is to the county. And if there's anything that I can do with the tribe, since the tribe is here, I won't do anything until they have a chance to, but I certainly am available to continue to work with transportation on that.
Thanks. Well, keep your ear to the ground. We'll keep you informed of anything we learn.
I had a different question, Don, thank you. Different topic, but one that we're gonna talk about with our state folks as well, just the Padilla and Booker bill related to ICE and just what happened here in Carpinteria. I know it'd be symbolic on the federal level, but the Visible Act, just with face coverings, I don't know if we could take action, or I guess not really, but I would be supportive of our county being in support of legislation on that as well, to lend support to
Yes.
the horrific and inhumane actions of ICE, in particular being unidentified people who add to the terror that's happening here on our own backyard. So I just want to put that out there for what it's worth.
Thank you. Yeah, we didn't anticipate that being needed to be addressed when we put together the federal platform. So I'm not sure how it would be covered by
Sure.
the existing platform, but certainly anybody who can who can have any empathy for the people that are being subjected to this is, whatever I can do to help, I'd be eager to do that.
Yeah, and I don't know if we can, how it works to add a tenant of our platform, or if we have to wait for another year, but something in support of immigrant families. I should review the platform. I just want to put that out there as a tenant to say, I would like to be more robust support from our county on the federal level and state level in all shapes and sizes when it comes to supporting immigrant and migrant families.
I think
Related to
that's
ICE.
direction we could give tomorrow.
Great.
That's right. So we do have some language in our platform and I'm looking for it, but since it's not covered directly in the platform, we talk about immigration reform,
Okay.
advocate for Congress and the president to enact comprehensive immigration reform that improves and simplifies the current legal
Sure.
immigration system, and coordination at all levels. So I think
Okay.
there, but tomorrow, because it's not directly covered in the platform, we can go to before the board. And if the board takes a majority vote, we can support legislation and send correspondence without it being in the platform because the board is taking a
And
position.
we can amend the platform, can't we, with the majority vote?
We're starting to create the one for next year, but yeah, I suppose we could amend the platform with a majority vote and add start with this year's platform and then carry it into next year's.
So one of us or ostensibly any board member could come up with language between now and tomorrow that would amend the platform. Does
Yeah,
that work?
yeah. We'd have to ask county council whether it would have to come back again because of the Brown Act,
Sure.
whether the Brown Act covers it. I don't know.
And potentially including this legislation and any others. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say you, Don, yeah, to flag anything going forward in this
Absolutely.
range element. I'd definitely be interested. Thank you.
Do we know if Salee's gonna do homework?
Thank you.
Other discussion? Any public comment for the federal update?
I do not see any public comment.
All right. All right, then then I need ideally a motion to receive and file the federal.
Supervisor Cap second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll move to item 4, state update from Hearst Brooks Espinoza. I think, looks like Jean, you're unmuted, so let's do your standard update and then we can return to SB 627 for
Sure.
further discussion.
Yeah, happy to kind of share where things are and what we've been doing over the past month or so. As you all know, I think June was a pretty packed month with first House deadlines and finalization of the state budget. Finalization, I guess, in quotes, because there still is ongoing work and outstanding items to be addressed in the state budget. One notable thing, obviously, that we want to make sure that we put on the record and mention is the elevation of Senator Monique Limon as the Senate President Pro Tem-elect. Senator Limon, as you know, has received the support of her caucus to take over Senate leadership from the current Pro Tem, Senator Mike McGuire. And we're really excited to continue to work with her office. It's unclear about at what point the transition will happen, but we understand that it's likely to take place sometime in 2026. So just want to make sure that we know that publicly. It's really exciting, and again, we really enjoy working with her office. So I think that's a huge benefit to the county that we wanted to make sure to note. In terms of the final 25-26 state budget, I think, as you are probably aware, the challenges in reaching agreement with the legislature is pretty significant. It's probably the most hotly debated budget in a while, and certainly with the backdrop of the changes at the federal level, increased immigration enforcement efforts, as you've mentioned, here in California, that have really, I think, underscored some of the kind of emotional challenges with addressing a state budget that for the most part, is on the decline from a revenue perspective. So on its own, without, additional federal action. So I think what we have seen in the 2025-26 state budget is sort of a relatively status quo budget with some reductions, but far fewer than was proposed by the governor in the May revision. The budget instead relies more heavily on utilizing reserves and internal borrowing, as well as larger, stronger than anticipated revenues from the state. So we're going to talk about some of the trailer bills, I think, later in terms of the housing trailer bills. We've never experienced a budget that was contingent upon the passing of another trailer bill, but the 25-26 state budget was, the entirety of it was contingent upon the passage of a second trailer bill that, for the most part, was exceptions to CEQA that the governor had requested. So there's a lot of provisions in there that the governor had been seeking, and that I think were challenging for the legislature to address on their own. And so he took his opportunity to tie it to the state budget. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We've included a number of the provisions of those two trailer bills in your packet. And we've also included a table that summarizes the key provisions of the budget and the other trailer bills as well. There remain outstanding items. In fact, Budget Committee is meeting today to discuss a couple of outstanding items before the legislature takes its recess on Friday. But we have yet to address the allocation of resources from Prop 4, the resources bond that was approved last fall, funding for SB 678, which is probation incentive funding, both the formula and the distribution. And then there's additional trailer bill associated with emergency loans for certain local agencies that are dealing with crises associated with the fires, as well as transit agencies who are having a hard time making ends meet. We anticipate that those items will have to be addressed then in August when the legislature returns from its recess. John mentioned that obviously the federal reconciliation bill has a huge impact on the state. And I think folks are trying to sort out what is sort of immediately necessary in terms of addressing at the state level and what can sort of wait given the delayed implementation of some of the reductions. So we have talked a little bit about the timing of when the legislature would and would not address those issues. Recently, there's been some suggestion that the legislature could wait until January to address some of those reductions. Of course, then you have to ensure that you have the resources to make ends meet while those reductions that are going to take effect immediately take place. So I think we're in a little challenging period budget-wise. And of course, we're happy to answer any additional questions about that. I did want to also mention to you that we are in the final week of the prior to recess. So we're in the policy committee deadline timeframe. So this is the last week that bills can be heard in their policy committees prior to the summer recess. It's going to be a pretty crazy week with really packed agendas. And then the legislature is off for about 4 weeks, and then we'll return, I think August 18th is the date. With that, I'll look at my colleagues and see if they have other issues that they want to raise. I know there's some other memos on specific issues that we can talk about too. Just looking, Liz, Josh, Kelly.
Just a little more follow-up on the, like, is the state gonna deal with what's happening at the federal level? The speaker's budget advisor put something out earlier this morning. It sounds like the thinking is the things that there may have to be some conversation when the legislature returns in August about some of the immediate areas where there may be budgetary impacts and they may need to make some policy changes, but that many of the proposals don't go into effect until 2027 and 28. And so there is a longer time horizon to have some of those conversations. So I think we will probably be having conversations about the impacts for potentially a couple of years, depending on kind of how this process goes. There's been some press stories about the managed care organization tax and whether the Trump administration can make some moves to sort of halt California's tax sooner than what the time frame may look like in HR 1. And so I think we'll probably know more at the end of the week. The administration is having a public meeting around the managed care organization tax, but there's certainly a lot of rumors about whether that provider tax goes away like as soon as July 1 of this year. So that would create like a $3.5 billion hole in the state budget. So that's something they potentially would need to be dealing with when they're returning in August. And I think the other thing folks are starting to think about is how implementation of the work requirements would look, and whether because of how the long time frame it takes for the state to make automation changes, if some of those should be done sooner rather than later to perhaps position the state better to make sure folks actually meet the work requirements. And so I'm sure that will be an area of discussion as well.
With that, we're happy to take any questions, Claire.
Great. Thank you both. Any discussion on the general state update? Questions?
I just wanted to ask you to watch, I think it's SB 567. I think it's Lamone's bill. And I think that's a really interesting one for Santa Barbara County in particular, where idle wells are repurposed. It's a pilot program. And then I don't have the bill number handy, but the bill that would put some financial responsibility on oil companies for remediation of climate change impacts, especially since the federal government wants to pull back FEMA support for disasters.
Yeah, which one is?
We will add SB 567 Lamone to our list. I think the bills on the oil wells, I'll have to just double check, but the polluter pays bill, is that what the ones?
Yeah.
Those bills are dead for the year. They did not make
Okay.
it out of the first house. So we can put them on our list and, you know,
Both
perhaps
of them? I thought AB 567 was still moving.
SB 567 is still moving. The
Okay.
Wiener bill on the polluter pays is not moving.
It's not, okay.
So we can put a note on it and see if it moves as a 2-year bill next year, but we'll let you know.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, but I also wanted to, I mean, I think I signed on individually on that one, just to sort of tee it up for next year. I'm sure we had the same meeting. Yeah, so I'm interested in just getting that on the radar for next year, the polluter pays.
Any public comment on the general update?
There's no request for public comment.
Okay. And let's move to, we wanted to have a discussion on SB 627. Rezer, did you want to start with comments? 627 is the no secret police requires
Sure, yeah.
evidence-based coverings that requires identification.
Same, I'm interested in being supportive of it. We can take that action tomorrow, or at least propose that action tomorrow of it prohibits federal, state and local law enforcement from wearing face masks and personal disguises. Again, I just having heard from so many of what it adds the terror and power dynamic in our community. And fear, and also some impersonation that's happening, we understand. So of people that actually aren't ICE, and just what's happening on our streets. So I would like to do that, but I don't think we do it here necessarily, but perhaps tomorrow.
I think you
If
give the
it's
motion to
not
support.
covered by our platform, we can't give the direction, so I think we do need to discuss it tomorrow, and I'm eager to see what we can do locally sooner.
Yeah, and so that's, I guess it's what I've been told, it's SB 627 and also SB 805. And SB 805 is law enforcement personnel to display identification, including their name and badge number. I mean, I was at an immigrant legal defense center event, and they actually, the lawyers there told people to share the information that if you're approached for your papers, or in an intimidating way, that you can actually call 911, because we don't know
Who these people are.
who these people are. And if you're being racially profiled, it could be just someone like some vigilante. So I just found that really frightening, but also very constructive. So I've been sharing that piece of information because, again, it came from an immigration lawyer who's trained in this. So I just think it's a very interesting and terrifying reality that we're dealing with.
So would you like to make a motion that we bring to the board to support SB 627 and SB 805?
Is that something that could be for tomorrow?
We have a D item tomorrow.
Yeah, we have a D item, so we'll
I
just,
think you could make the motion tomorrow without necessarily an LPC.
That it came at the request.
We need you all there to be staff to talk.
yeah, maybe that's just a heads up for
Okay.
tomorrow.
Jesus found there is a provision in our legislative plank that talks about immigration, et cetera. It's kind of under economic, right?
But it's super broad.
It's really broad. It's for reform and
Yeah.
but it talks about coordinating, which I think is something that's not happening, like coordinating at the local. But I don't know that it covers these particular.
Immigration
items.
reform? What the heck?
Oh, no, it seems like.
It's broad.
A big opportunity there.
It's broad, yeah.
Well, we
I mean,
just,
one reform is any ICE activity has to require that officers wear badges and not wear
Face
masks.
Yeah.
That seems like a reasonable reform.
think, I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's unreasonable search and seizure.
So I think just to be clear, I don't think we're taking action. I'm not proposing an action here today in this committee, but rather just a heads up that'll be part of discussion tomorrow. And we did, just for agenda management, we moved it to D1 because we're getting requests from the community to be clear on timing. So it'll be about 9:45 in the morning for anyone who might be watching, so that we have a time certain that will be helpful for folks.
Thank you.
Just very quickly, both bills are up tomorrow in Assembly, Public Safety, to be heard. Just letting you know, depending on
Okay.
the timing of
Okay,
your action.
great.
Real quick,
Okay.
can we give direction for tomorrow? From this body to that body? Is it recommendation or is the timing not work out?
Well, it sounds like,
It's, so it's, I think we're thinking that because it's already on the agenda that either supervisor could make the motion in the meeting as part of that item rather than the committee trying to bring an emergency.
Okay, I was just,
Yeah, we're not specifically noticed for those two bills
Okay.
to take action on this. To recommend it to the full board.
and it's being voted on tomorrow or being heard tomorrow?
Heard in Assembly Public Safety.
Okay.
Who's the chair of that committee?
Assembly, Liz.
It's
help me out.
Assemblymember Nick Schultz from Los Angeles County.
Thank you.
Okay. And then different topics, but on the trailer bill, it doesn't seem like there's any, I appreciate that it's still on the agenda as a kind of awareness, but there's no, it's a done deal, right?
That's correct.
The
This is
sequence.
what, okay.
Oh, for number 5.
If you had it on for discussion, I just was curious as to,
Yeah, and we were planning to, mostly because it has pulled in some of the bills that the county either supported or opposed.
okay,
And so I think having an update of, well, some of this action has actually occurred.
Okay.
The trails process would be informative.
okay.
I would say we're just sort of sifting through it. There's like so many elements to the 131 and 130.
Yep.
Still trying to figure out how that impacts projects.
And I think that Linda Honickman wanted to speak to that one, right?
I
Yeah,
thought she wanted to speak to the ice one.
Yeah, let me just wrap
Can
wrap
I
up.
ask a question about that one, Lisa?
Yeah.
Do we have any sense, the trailer bill, is it all for going forward or is there any retroactive?
That's what-
bits?
We have some, can we, oh, yeah.
Finish up item 4 and then
Oh,
we'll,
sorry.
all good. And then we'll move ahead to 5. Let me just, I know we heard a little bit from Linda at the beginning, but does Linda or anybody else have something on SB 627 that they'd like to add? No hands.
Public comment?
Hi, no, I don't have any more comments.
Yeah,
Then you
I'll
can-
save it for tomorrow. Just thank you for including it for tomorrow's meeting. That's kind of the direction I was trying to go.
Great.
So
Oh,
it
thank
works
you.
out.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
In that case, could I have a motion to receive and file the report on the state update?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Hi.
Now we'll move to item 5. So we just kind of teased this is the follow-up on the budget trailer bills, AB 130 and SB 131 that specifically deal with CEQA changes related to housing. So we actually have Chris Lee with us to give us kind of this overview of the bills and help us understand what things are changing that we had maybe taken a position on before. So we understand the landscape of what's happening, and then Director Plowman is here and we'll continue the discussion. So Chris, thanks for being here.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. I'll just high level talk about the interplay between these bills and the budget, because I think that was a very interesting and novel approach. Basically, in the final negotiations between the two houses and the governor, one of these trailer bills basically became the underpinning of the entire budget deal. So the SB 131 trailer bill, which included the additional $500 million in HAP funding and a pretty broad suite of CEQA changes, had to have been passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. I think that was Monday, June 27th. It feels like centuries ago, in order for the entire 2025 Budget Act to take effect. So really a strong power play by the governor to really leverage the entire budget deal against some changes to CEQA. And I think on the legislature's side, for some additional funding for the HAP program. And so AB 130, as I think your staff just mentioned, is a huge bill. And so this was the first housing budget trailer bill, and it attracted a lot of opposition, a lot of comment, but it was not the one that became the sort of leverage point for the entire budget process. But a good way to think of it is it really combined about 3 or 4 different policy bills that were moving through the legislature already. So Senate Bill 681 by Senator Wahab, who chairs the Housing Committee, had dozens of changes to housing law. We highlighted some in the LPC report that are particularly relevant to counties, but there's a lot of other pieces in there related to things like fees and fines for homeowners associations, just a huge manner of things. But the key ones that I'll talk about here, because they were relevant to the committee and the county's positions, were, in addition to SB 681 and its dozens of provisions, AB 306 by Assemblymember Schultz, which was basically the freeze on building standard changes, was also incorporated into AB 130. There's some really minor tweaks to the kind of process in that because of some cost-related concerns with the Building Standards Commission. But basically, the dates and everything else, and really the fundamental policy, which is basically you can't really make substantive changes to the building code with limited exceptions for home hardening and for code amendments that are substantially similar to those that were included in the last triennial cycle and are submitted this summer. I believe the cutoff is in September, but I can confirm that for you, until 2031. And so for the substantive issues that the county had with AB 306, those problems are embedded now in the text of AB 130. I heard a question about timing. One thing about budget trailer bills is that they can take effect immediately upon the governor's signature without requiring an urgency clause. So this law is in effect now, but they didn't move up that cutoff date for the resubmittal of local code amendments that were in the previous cycle. And so if there were some local amendments that were underway based on that, consistent with that, that date still hasn't passed. I believe it's September, but I can confirm if there are any questions there. But I also, if I recall correctly, that really wasn't the fundamental issue for the county. The fundamental issue for the county was development of reach codes and then addressing some of the issues related to coastal erosion, which I believe were going to require new code amendments rather than just resubmittal of something you'd previously adopted. The other provision that was included that's definitely relevant to the county is the provisions of a Quirk-Silva bill related to homeless shelter inspections. And so this builds off of a bill that passed a few years ago, basically implementing a complaint-driven process for code-related issues in shelters. This really expands both the reporting and some of the substantive requirements when there is both a complaint as well as just requiring annual reports to the state to ensure that these inspections are happening. And it's at the penalty of losing eligibility for state funding related to homeless shelters, which is a pretty broad category there. So that's provisions that should definitely be reviewed. And moving on to really the CEQA piece of this, the bill that was incorporated here is one that we'd also discussed a little bit That's AB 607 WIX. The other CEQA bill is, I'm sorry, it's 609 WIX, and then in SB 131, it's 607 Wiener. But this exemption is related to infill housing. Infill is defined in a way that also includes urbanized areas in the unincorporated area. And the source of a lot of the conflict on this bill was really about what are the labor-related provisions that apply to workers who are building these projects. And so how it shook out is basically that projects that use this exemption and that are 100% affordable to lower income households, as well as projects that are over 85 feet tall, would require the payment of prevailing wage for construction workers that are on those projects, and then some of the health benefit requirements that were included in Assemblymember Wix's AB 2011 from a couple years ago. I think the other element about this new exemption that's going to be interesting for implementation and is something that's, I would say new, I don't think I've seen similar provisions, is a requirement for a tribal consultation process that's modeled after AB 52. But unlike AB 52, there's a bit more clearly an endpoint to when that consultation process ends. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this rolls out. If a lot of lead agencies and project proponents, want to use this exemption, given, the prevailing wage standards for affordable projects and this new consultation requirement. So those are the top lines on AB 130. Again, dozens of provisions. All of them were in some legislative form before they were amended into trailer bill. But SB 681 in particular included, I want to say, 24 different provisions that all could have been individual bills on their own. So there's really a lot in there. So I'll pause and see if there are any questions on AB 130, and then we can talk a little bit about SB 131.
Chris, I have a question. On the component where you said in order to be able to use this exemption, you'd have to have prevailing wage, but is that just for 100% affordable and buildings over 85 feet?
Correct.
Okay, so like a market rate project could come through with, 20% affordable and use the exemption.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Without prevailing wage. Yeah. Okay, that was my one question.
Okay. Anything else on that one?
Questions? We do have a request to speak from Morel Brooks. All right,
Yes.
Morel, go ahead.
Thank you. One of the questions I had, and I think was the concern about 609 and the inclusion of builder's remedy language. Can you explain a little bit about that? Make sure I have my facts straight. That there would be exemptions for builder's remedies projects.
It's capped at 5 acres, but Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know that I can say much more than that on that one. Yeah, that is
It was slipped in, it seemed like, because it had not been, and that was sort of one of the main commitments, if you will, of builder's remedy, was that there would be CEQA review. And so now anything that's under 5 acres, I guess it's 5 acres and under, can be exempt. And so we have a number of builder's remedy projects in Isla Vista area that could potentially qualify. And so we're looking into that. Some of them already did qualify for CEQA exemptions based on other items or other provisions. But but our big builder's remedy project, the Georgie one, would not. Yeah, and some of the others are larger properties.
Morel, other comments or questions?
No, thank you.
No other comments?
No other comments.
Other discussion, questions? All right. Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate your expertise.
Thank you. And do you want to briefly talk about 131?
Yeah, he just
Yeah.
maybe 130.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is the one again that the kind of entire budget bill was premised on, and I'll let Josh talk about HAP if he would like. But on the CEQA front, there's a lot of changes here as well. There's an existing categorical exemption for infill housing that has only applied within cities. And this bill requires the successor to the Office of Planning and Research, the Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. I call them Lucy, but they like to be called LCI. But there's a U in there. To modify and do some mapping for the Class 32 exemption to include urbanized unincorporated areas, and then create a process for jurisdictions and others to be able to petition for mapping changes. And so this is potentially interesting because unlike the prior AB 130 exemption, there's not new policy riders related to labor and other things on this one. And in a lot of jurisdictions that have been very supportive of housing development, the Class 32 exemption has been really commonly used for urban infill projects. So this will be an interesting one to monitor from the county angle, given the unincorporated applicability. The other provisions included in this bill provide a laundry list of new exemptions, and they're subject to a lot of limitations and qualifications. But just to really quickly run down what was included: rezonings undertaken to implement housing element updates, agricultural employee housing projects, projects to provide sewer service to disadvantaged communities with inadequate service, Proposition 4 climate bond projects that benefit climate resiliency, biodiversity, and sensitive species recovery, or which construct and maintain parks and trails, wildfire risk reduction projects, broadband projects undertaken by public or private entities, daycare, health clinic, food bank, or advanced manufacturing projects, the latter of which there created a lot of consternation and controversy given potential environmental impacts of certain manufacturing projects, and then high-speed rail maintenance facilities. Other sort of smaller changes to the process under CEQA limited the environmental review, the scope of what needed to be reviewed for housing development projects that are often called near-miss projects. So those are projects that would be eligible for an existing exemption, but for a single condition. And so the review would be limited to that condition for again, limited to housing projects. And then for CEQA-related litigation, there's new limitations on what needs to be included in the administrative record that's prepared by lead agencies during that litigation. And that applies broadly, except for projects related to distribution centers or oil and gas infrastructure. So again, this is kind of, it's broader definitely than what was included in Senator Wiener's bill, but some of the core housing related pieces there are pretty similar to what was in print already in SB 607. And some of this, I tend to think that we might see this option used more, particularly in county unincorporated areas, but I think we will see how implementation goes on that. So, Josh, anything on HAP you want to highlight?
Yes, but I think I'll just save it for the next agenda item as it kind of is intertwined with SB 16 and 606. But thanks.
Great. Well, happy to answer any questions on this one as well.
Discussion or questions?
Just to, I wanted to mention something about AB 130 really quickly, and that is that they created a VMT bank. So this is actually interesting and I think could be helpful. And something that we talked about in my department when we were adopting vehicle miles traveled as our CEQA threshold. So this could allow different types of projects that might have VMT impacts, like what we were finding is like the stuff that for ag enterprise ordinance, things that are out in the rural area, they have VMT impacts because they're not located near any urban centers. But this would give them the chance to be able to contribute to a fund, and that would be their way to mitigate. So I thought that was.
And how will that fund be used?
That's a good question, right? And that's devil's in the details, of course. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, but it's going to be administered by HCD. And the governor's office assigned them the task of developing a methodology and details to implement transit-oriented development implementation fund. So including mapping of eligible urban infill sites, and that's by July 1, 2027. So that's going to happen. And then the other thing is they created a shot clock for ministerial application for housing projects. So, the Permit Streamlining Act didn't apply to ministerial permits previously. So now we are going to have a shot clock, which says we have to approve or deny the ministerial application within 60 days after it being deemed complete. So those are, I think, kind of important things for us to be watching. And then, of course, it just, again, speeds up housing.
I mean, practically, how does it work for your office? But I mean, I almost don't even know what to ask because so much density to use.
Yeah.
No pun intended, comes down, how do you get all these changes? How does it work for you all to learn this?
Yeah. So we do as much reading as we can. It's hard to read the bills because
Yeah.
they're just so poorly worded. So we do as much as we can reading the summaries of the bills. And then if we have specific questions or concerns, we work with council to kind of go through those things and make sure we fully understand how they're going to impact our process. But it's a lot to digest. We're all just kind of shaking our heads at this point, kind of, okay, how is this going to really affect our process now and the projects that we're seeing in the pipeline?
And is that something that CSAC does to help you, like a cheat sheet, changes?
There are things like that out there. We do use those. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
There are materials that are available. I mean, Jesus sent me a good article that really did a good job, I thought, of breaking down both bills.
Look out there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's a lot. It's a lot to change.
A lot of change.
Yeah.
A lot of change. Yeah, like Chris was saying, it's multiple bills wedged into this trailer.
And you'll be briefing, Lisa, you'll be briefing supervisors when you guys have a full picture, like individually or?
Yeah.
306 is a case in point where we were having a lot of discussion about what that impact would be relative to the moratorium on building standards and energy code and the like. And it looked like that wasn't moving anywhere.
Right.
But then was introduced, and this was a way of, I gather, overcoming the resistance on the Senate side to see unanimous approval on the Assembly side.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, no further discussion. Do we have a motion to receive and file the report? Moved?
That moved. A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, with that, we'll move to our last item, functional zero homelessness, looking at SB 606 and SB 16. So Supervisor Capps interested in SB 606, so we're chatting today because this relates to a measure of functional zero homelessness, specifically for the unsheltered. We also brought in SB 16 because that uses this metric as well. We actually talked about SB 16 a couple months ago in the committee. It's been through some very dramatic changes where the committee was considering opposition. It was substantively changed. we didn't worry about it. It has been substantially changed again, although Josh will give us some procedural updates. One thing, so SB 606 relates to HHAP round 7 funding, requires new data reporting, new planning, new financial modeling around reaching the way they're defining functional zero homelessness. And this is a little bit different than sometimes the way we hear about this metric. And this bill defines it as sufficient housing for across all types to accommodate a jurisdiction's unsheltered, chronically homeless population, and that's based on the point in time count. So it's like having the housing available if we're able to transition people into that housing. SB 16 goes beyond this and has a lot of requirements where they say you need to actually solve this problem within 8 years. You need to actually do things as opposed to like report the data and plan. So a little more controversy around that one. So I think we'll go to Josh because there is some like overlap with the trailer bills and some things that happened last week that are kind of relevant to the context of both bills.
Okay.
Hi, Josh.
Good morning. So I will start by picking up where Chris left off, which is now, so we've had Jean, Chris, and I will also tell you about SB 131. So if that doesn't tell you how much attention this bill got, then wait until I'm done. So essentially, SB 131 included all of the CEQA elements that Chris mentioned, and then Chris also mentioned that it included a funding commitment for the next round of the HAP program, the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Funding. So the trailer bill, while it is attached to the 25-26 fiscal year budget, does not include any funding for the 25-26 fiscal year. The $500 million that Chris mentioned is kind of earmarked for the 26-27 fiscal year and kind of authorizes it effective July 1, 2026. So essentially, there's a bit of a delay, as you know locally better than anybody, a little bit of a delay between when these funds are authorized at the state level and dispersed. I think it's the goal of the legislature and a little bit the administration, given the state fiscal situation, to kind of more or less utilize 25-26 as this gap year, knowing that HAP round 6 funds have not actually kind of started to flow to local governments yet. So there's not actually new money budgeted in 25-26, which just setting the context here around these functional zero bills in SB 606 and 16 is an important note that over this 2-year period of 25-26 and 26-27, when it comes to the HAP program, there's basically a quarter of the funding budgeted for those 2 years than local governments have seen over the last couple years here. And the other piece that SB 131 does that we haven't talked about yet is it essentially calls for future legislation before allocating this new $500 million. Calls for a future legislation that more or less enhances accountability measures, and it identifies about 6 elements that need to be included in this future legislation. I'll name a few of those. Having a compliant housing element is on the list. Having a local encampment policy consistent with the administration's kind of model encampment resolution that was issued a month or so ago. And then the last I'll mention is having a pro-housing designation, which I think has been discussed with this body in the past. So that's what SB 131 does when it comes to a budget trailer bill in terms of identifying the future of the HAP program and calling for future legislation to advance those priorities in allocating the HAP funding. So I will now move to SB 16. As Claire mentioned, SB 16 has gone through a series of dramatic changes over this first year of the legislative session. It started in a pretty concerning form for many counties. It then, as it went through its first House, Senate Policy Committee, had dramatic changes come out of the Senate Housing Committee as committee amendments, which essentially, changed kind of the future of the bill and reduced it to a point where most, if not all, of the entities removed their opposition to the bill. But now, as it has advanced to the Assembly and was awaiting a hearing in the Assembly Housing and Community Development Committee, the author amended the bill to kind of advance new priorities for the bill, which I think Claire has highlighted a little bit, and they're also summarized in the memo. But essentially, the bill did several things, and there's a little summary of it in our memo this month as well. But essentially, the bill kind of defines functional zero, requires specific benchmarks to achieve functional zero. It also identifies some city and county responsibilities when it comes to operating housing or interim housing within the city or county's jurisdiction. That's one piece that is different than the original form of SB 16, but similar in terms of trying to advance commitments from cities and counties in terms of what they shall deliver when it comes to interim housing. It also includes a property tax exemption component and some housing or RENA allocation specified changes as well. So that's kind of the entire package. The Assembly Housing and Community Development Committee, I think it's fair to say, had concerns with the bill. The committee analysis, as it was originally set for an early July hearing, the committee analysis kind of laid out those concerns in a robust analysis of the bill, and then proposed significant committee amendments that would essentially kind of leave the city-county responsibilities piece pretty much intact, but then change those annual benchmarks that must be met, instead kind of shifting it to this 8-year kind of self-directed targets for achieving functional zero. So the bill was pulled from that first hearing that it was set for in early July and moved to a later hearing, and then ultimately pulled from that hearing as well, as the bill would have been heard this Wednesday, but has been pulled and is becoming a 2-year bill. So you will not see this bill advancing this year, and will be eligible to move again next year, as it won't meet the policy committee deadlines. SB 606, I think Claire has kind of mentioned the overview there. SB 606 is still kind of alive, so to speak. It has a hearing this week in the Assembly Human Services Committee. I think you have a summary in front of you, but essentially it defines, a kind of a different version of functional zero, and more or less requires cities and counties or HAP applicants to identify what they would need in order to achieve functional zero. So rather than kind of imposing the specific timeline or this specific benchmarks by year that would jeopardize receiving funding, it kind of says, for local jurisdictions to identify the resource need and some kind of planning and reporting around achieving functional zero. So that bill will be heard on the 15th. I think that just the additional context I would add is that there were often legislative efforts through policy bills to shape the future of the HAP program. Those often get a lot of attention, but ultimately the majority, if not all, of the shaping of the application and planning requirements for the HAP program have occurred in the budget process through budget trailer bills. And so, SB 606 and SB 16 take unique approaches to planning around the HAP funding, but there are bills in the past, just last year and the year before, there was AB 799 that took a different approach, but really would have restructured the entire HAP program through a policy bill. Ultimately, just small pieces of that kind of found their way into budget negotiations and into a budget trailer bill on round 5 and 6 of HAP. The same goes if you look multiple years back. Assemblymember Chu had a couple bills, AB 816 in 2021, AB 3269, substantially similar in 2020. And Assemblymember Meritsuchi in 2022 had AB 2755. And I just mentioned that not to necessarily say that SB 606 will have the same fate, but generally speaking, I think it's the goal or wishes, I guess you could say, of the legislature, budget staff and leadership to kind of shape the HAP program through the trailer bill process. And these bills, as they advance and generate conversation, could influence some of what occurs in those budget negotiations. And then I think I said lastly and quickly, but I'm going to say it again. One more thing I wanted to make sure I note just quickly is both bills, 606 and the 616, have kind of raised this policy debate and concern among housing and homelessness advocates and some counties and county associations. This concern over the prioritization of interim housing and kind of the potential that the prioritization will shift resources away from permanent housing and supportive services as you seek to prioritize interim housing. And even just the prioritization of the unsheltered population over individuals that may be sheltered but still homeless. It's also been a concern raised by housing and homelessness advocates. So hopefully that's a little bit of helpful information as you kind of think through these bills, and happy to answer any questions.
Questions or discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'll just ask Director Armas to weigh in. I know we checked in with your
With our team.
Yeah, on specifically on 606.
In some ways, I think the county is ahead of where these bills
Yeah.
are, given the briefing that we provided to the board recently, where we raised the issue of functional zero and also the need for improved coordination both internally to the county organization and then externally between the county and the incorporated cities. And so we outlined for the board a desire to come back with a strategy that deals on both fronts. Suggested that we could strive to meet functional zero within the current housing element cycle, which takes us to 2031. And we are going to be working on that, and we'll come back with some information for your consideration after the recess. Of the two bills, I think we're more supportive of 606 because it provides more recognition, I think, of the challenges at the local level to get something going, both operationally and then budgetarily. So we think SB 16 converting to a 2-year bill is a good thing. It allows some of the other issues to be more thoroughly vetted and support what 606 does.
Is 606, the definition of functional zero, the same as ours?
Most functional zeros tied to the PIT count, and we think that really needs some thorough discussion because PIT is a point in time, fixed day out of the year. And we think that the data that we shared with the board about what's reflected in the management information system is a better indicator of success or lack of it.
But ostensibly, so the context for why I raised this was the Elizabeth Funk, the founder of Dignity Moves, reached out as a strong proponent of 606 to ask for our consideration of supporting this legislation and giving this county a lot of credit for really the inspiration for this legislation. That we are already, as Jesus said, already doing this, and really what she's trying to do and the author of this legislation is to get other counties to follow suit. So I think in that vein, I think it being supportive of it makes a lot of sense if everyone agrees. Seems like it's the less binding than the other and really is just is putting in legislation what we've done here and what she's and others are out there bragging about what Santa Barbara is doing. So
It's still alive.
yeah, exactly. And so I'm in favor of supporting it if my other committee member is. Great.
Do you need a motion? Yes, I was just seeing if there were any further requests, comments, or anything HBE wanted to say. But by all means, motion.
Great. I'll move to be supportive of SB 606.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Motion passes.
Great.
And could I just get one last motion to receive and file our optional zero homelessness report? So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I think that concludes our business. Unless there are any further comments. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to our advocate for being here. And we'll talk to you in September. Enjoy your recess.